This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
And good morning. Welcome to Loose on the Lead on this Sunday morning. I'm Seth Merrill from Equidaily.com in the studio, live via phone. Steve Bick from Sirius and XM's At the Races. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, Seth. Good morning, everybody.
And before we get to some news, why don't we touch on why you're on the phone this weekend. You were down at Far Hills. I'm envious. Talked to Joe Clancy towards the end of last week and got some of his thoughts on the Grand National, the Grade 1 jump race that was the highlight of the card. He told us about Far Hills and what a great day it is. Certainly, you know, thousands of people showing up. It sounds like a lot of fun. I'd like to get down there sometime. Before we talk about the races specifically, just give us a little of the atmosphere down at Far Hills yesterday.
Oh, it's wonderful. I mean, that's the second year in a row that we've gone down there at the invitation of Guy Terciari and Bill Gallo. I love covering the jump races during the racetrack, during the season. And it's such a special and unique setup. It's a natural bowl in a valley, and you get people tailgating. They come early in the day. They set up elaborate buffets, and it's just a super festive atmosphere. And then the racing starts, and it's different from the racetrack because it's a country course that is undulating and very challenging. It's a very different, demanding kind of a setup as opposed to the racetrack where speed is at a premium for these jumpers. Here, it's more fitness and endurance, and made for a great day. And of course, the Eclipse Championship, the Eclipse Award, was at stake in the Grade 1 Grand National, and demonstrative. It just could not have been more impressive. He was tremendous.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about that specifically. As I talked to Joe Clancy last week, I said demonstrative, I think, would have a stranglehold on the Eclipse Award if he won, having won the New York Turf Riders Grade 1 event, the Lonesome Glory Grade 1 event, and then adds the Grade 1 Grand National on Saturday. So you would think he is the leader in the clubhouse, and I don't think it's possible to catch him at this point. I will also add, nice rebound performance from Divine Fortune. Divine Fortune runs second after a couple of head scratchers, most recently in the Smithwick and the Lonesome Glory. Fell last time, but 2 starts back left the course. So you didn't quite know whether that Shepherd runner would be able to rebound at age 11, but a good second place finish with him. So give us a report on the Grand National itself.
Well, Divine Fortune, who won the race last year, he likes that course. And at the age of 11, he's pretty remarkable in and of himself. And Parker's Project, who also was third last year, he clearly likes it at Far Hills. And that was really the storyline, even though Demonstrative has been in such better form of late after throat surgery. He had tie-back surgery that really righted the ship for him and for Richard Valentine and Mrs. Ostrom. So that was really a big part of this, and it was anxious to see if he would be a little bit better here at Far Hills this year than he had been the last couple. And indeed he was. And really it all comes down to the fact that he's a different horse after the myectomy. I mean, that is the key, clearly. He was under wraps. Robbie Walsh had him absolutely under a stranglehold the entire way around. And finally he let him go at the last jump, and he pricked his ears and just stormed off to win. I mean, he could have won as easy as he pleased.
Yeah, it was as I say, a performance that you have to think sews up an Eclipse Award. And I'll ask you, we were talking with Joe Clancy, as I say, last week, and we were laughing because this is one of those non-betting steeplechase venues. But as Clancy said, you go around. The hat is getting passed a little bit. If you want a little action, there's a little action available.
Oh, there's more than a little action. There's guys making book with the clipboards of the chalkboard. Absolutely, there's plenty of action going on, and there's going to be more. They're very close, and of course they were very close a couple of years ago to getting the pari-mutuel installed, and it's getting bigger and bigger. It's basically a fundraiser for the Robert Wood Johnson Medical Center close by. But this is the premier event for steeplechasing in North America. It's getting more and more international attention. And I think Guy Torsiglieri and the committee believe that once they get the pari-mutuel involved, the thing can grow exponentially and become an even bigger international event. I encourage anybody, and it doesn't have to be Far Hills. You can go down to Middleburg, Virginia. You can go to Montpelier Station. They just were at Geneseo Valley in western New York last week. Shawan Valley and the Shawan Downs there in Maryland. There are so many venues and wonderful opportunities to enjoy this kind of a setting for steeplechase away from the racetrack. I think anybody goes, they'll be captivated immediately.
And it's a good chance to remind people to go to the National Steeplechase Association website. If folks are interested, the schedule is there. It'll tell where they're going to race next. You can watch replays of all the races and pull up all that kind of information there. So National Steeplechase Association, if you type that into Google, it'll pull up. They have a very, very nice website. Steve, before we go to the first break, let's hit on some of the news stories of the week. And obviously the main news story was a negative one. In the middle of the week, I was on your radio show, and we already talked about this a little bit, but just a very sad, tragic event out at Indiana Downs. 17-year-old apprentice Juan Saez, who was on the up and come, certainly, leading rider out at Ellis Park this summer, only 17 years old, suffers fatal injuries in a spill at Indiana Downs earlier this week. And I'm sure you had plenty of discussion on your radio show as well. I talked about it on TV, obviously, and hit on it with some of the guests. And it's just, we all know that danger's out there, and it just, you know, a situation like this, which thankfully happens very, very infrequently, but it brings it home, puts it all in perspective, and again, really sad, tragic event out at Indiana Downs earlier this week.
Well, luckily, we only get, on average, 2 of these a year, and when you watch a horse clip heels and you watch the spills, you think back to Rajiv Baraz, Jockey Club Gold Cup Day, you realize why people get in an uproar, why it's important for stewards to make sure that riders stick to a set of principles and are guided by decorum and good decision making. I mean, this was just simply a situation where Saez on Montezuma's Express flips heels and goes down and is struck by a trailer. And it can happen any day, any place, at any level, A track, B track, C track. It doesn't matter. It can happen in the morning. It can happen in the afternoon. And whether it's a Mike Rowland or Mike Venezia or any of the famous, legendary names that have been taken, in the afternoon, or whether it's a Juan Vasquez, the exercise rider killed at Belmont a couple of months ago. This is an industry and a career choice that is fraught with peril. And for the exercise riders, for professional race riders, for farriers, for the gate crew, veterinarians, grooms, hot walkers, trainers, everybody involved in this is at risk. They turn their back for a moment in a stall, you can be killed. You clip heels and go down, you can be killed. We all bet on these races. We talk about them. We promote them. Nobody's going to come and kill us if we pick the wrong horse. So it does put into perspective the incredible courage of everybody and the dedication involved in this lifestyle choice. And it should be very sobering to everybody who takes cracks at jocks, calls them pinheads, and kicks and screams and carries on because of what they think is a bad decision or a bad ride that probably isn't. That is probably created by the circumstances the jock is dealing with on a horse. There's very few of us that have to face this, and so none of us really understand. But we do understand burying a 17-year-old that was just absolutely taking the game by storm. And obviously the family and friends, I mean, every picture that you come across of Juan Saez shows him beaming and smiling. And, all the guys that have ridden with him these past 6-8 months in the United States, just glowing comments about what kind of a kid he was and what kind of a career he had ahead of him. So obviously our hearts go out, and the sympathies and all the appropriate feelings, but there's really nothing appropriate to say about a jock or anybody in this game being taken doing what they love and what they're dedicated their lives toward.
Yeah, it was just so sad, and as you say, it puts it in perspective. And I said it when I was on with you on the radio. I said it last week on television as well, but for the weekend viewers, you're up at Saratoga. It's really, when it comes home, when you're there live with 20,000 other people, and there's that spill in a race, and everybody is just focused on the spot of the spill as the race continues. There's that collective gasp, and then you watch and you wait for the jockey to stand up. And if he doesn't and they load him into the ambulance, everybody kind of waits to get word that he's okay or what the extent of the injury is. And on a day like that, when it is the worst of all possible outcomes, again, it just does put it in perspective, takes the wind out of your sails a little bit for at least a couple of days as far as, watching and enjoying the sport at the level you would like to, because particularly a kid like this, 17 years old, just so sad. But, the life goes on, and they had a nice memorial, not only at Indiana a couple of days later, but at some other tracks around the country I saw there was moments of silence as well. So it was nice that the racing industry kind of stepped back and, as I said, had a chance to put it all in perspective. Let's talk about one other news story that, again, not really a positive news story on the week. Wise Dan goes to the sidelines with a little bit of a ding, and it seems like it is. Anytime Triple Crown, you head to the Kentucky Derby or the Triple Crown races, Breeders' Cup, in that 2 or 3 weeks beforehand, you're just kind of waiting and crossing your fingers that none of the big names get a ding. And this pretty much was the marquee horse at this year's Breeders' Cup. Wise Dan, unfortunately, goes to the sidelines. Doors still open as far as continuing the career next year. I'm a little bit doubtful that will happen. We'll see, though. He is a gelding, so if he came back, you could understand that. But Wise Dan goes to the sidelines. So again, another little bit of unfortunate news from earlier this week.
The frustrating part of this, and I was lucky enough to talk to Charlie Lopresti off air. Charlie not in a frame of mind to discuss this publicly, and that's why you saw the quotes coming from Morton Fink. And Fink used the word devastated, and I thought, gosh, how devastated could you be? But when I talked to Charlie, I really came to understand. He was very upset because for him, this is a horse who he starts every day with. It's the first horse that he's checking on in the morning, the last horse when he comes back for feeding that he looks at before he heads out. And the travail this year after the surgery for colic and then getting him back and the 2 wins and the objective of winning a 3rd straight Breeders' Cup Mile and potentially a 3rd straight Horse of the Year title has really absorbed Charlie Lopresti. And the worst part about this, obviously for the fans, there's the fact that we don't get to witness another attempt at history. But for Charlie and for Morton Fink, they were convinced, and if you when you get a chance to hear from Lopresti, which I'm sure you will between now and Breeders' Cup, he absolutely was sure that Wise Dan was not losing that Breeders' Cup Mile. He felt that coming out of that Shadwell, he was absolutely back to where he was at his best and maybe even as good or better than ever. So this was very much a frustration for Lopresti that's going to take a while to get over, and we'll see about him coming back as an 8-year-old. This is not a injury that, in terms of a little fracture, it is a weight-bearing location, but it is something that heals, and it shouldn't have much problem healing up 100%. So we'll see about having him back. In the meantime, Toronado assumes the mantle of favoritism undoubtedly in the Breeders' Cup Mile, and the storylines will write themselves when we get to Santa Anita. And, of course, 2 weeks from today, we'll be recapping the Breeders' Cup.
And I will reiterate something you said in the middle of your talk there. but potentially Breeders' Cup win, Horse of the Year. And really that story, since Wise Dan has gone to the sidelines, has kind of floated around a little bit. And I think that's very interesting and probably plays into the devastation of the Wise Dan team. Because if you go back to the springtime, Wise Dan goes in for surgery. We thought, boy, how about the strength of this class of older horses this year? And you thought Wise Dan was a long shot at that point to be Horse of the Year. But as things have played out over the past couple of months, a win in the Breeders' Cup Mile, I don't know how I'd say he was a shoe-in, but he was a pretty good bet to be Horse of the Year yet again. I
agree with that, especially in light of the flop that we got from Closed Hatches coming at Keeneland in the Spinster. That derailed her. And I suppose that right now you still wait and watch for the 3-year-olds in the Breeders' Cup Classic, and it does seem that any of the major candidates among the Classic contenders is going to be your Horse of the Year, whether it's a Shared Belief, a California Chrome, even a Bayern, even a Tonalist. Whoever wins that has got enough of a supporting resume for the year out of the Classic is almost certainly your Horse of the Year. Yeah, it's going to be very, very intriguing. All right, Steve, we'll take our first break. When we come back, you'll stick with us for one more segment as we go through some of the stakes action tomorrow. We're in that lull period between the Breeders' Cup preps and the Breeders' Cup itself, but some nice showcase action, various venues around the country with state breds, and also the stakes race at Keeneland yesterday was intriguing. So we'll touch on some of those when we come back. Stay tuned. Loose on the Lead continues.
Go Zephyr kicking clear, and Go Zephyr is pulling away impressively.
Hysterical Lady, Ginger Punch to win it.
And it's Wilco in front, and he's going to pull off a huge upset here.
But it's Round Pond going on to take the distaff.
Awesome again. Sire of 10 Grade 1 winners, 4 Breeders' Cup champions, and 4 multimillionaires standing at Adena Springs.
I'm Seth Merrill. Join Brian Nadeau and me Wednesday, October 29th at the Clubhouse Racebook for the 2014 Capital OTB Breeders' Cup Seminar. We'll take an in-depth look at all of this year's races and give you our picks. You'll also receive free past performances from the Daily Racing Form and Brisnet. So plan to join Brian Nadeau and me here at the Clubhouse Racebook Wednesday, October 29th at 7 p.m. for this year's Breeders' Cup Seminar.
It's more than just a sports bar. It's Stadium Cafe. Located at 389 Broadway in Saratoga, it's the place to be for great times and great food. Their menu features everything from gourmet entrees to your favorite wraps and sandwiches. Or maybe you just want to grab a beer and catch the game. So what could be better than that? How about 2 Stadium Cafes? There's also the Westside Stadium, right up the road at 112 Congress Street. Same great menu, same great service. Whether you're hanging at the bar or just relaxing outside on their spacious covered patio, you'll always leave knowing you'll be back again.
We love, above all, the staff. We love Dave Harmon, and the food is fantastic.
Not 1, but 2. 112 Congress Street, 389 Broadway. Guaranteed to be a home run.
Welcome back to Loose on the Lead. Seth Merrow in the studio, Steve Bick via phone. In a few minutes, we're also going to be joined by, we're going to cut out Steve and connect with Keith McCalmont from Woodbine. We're going to do a little preview of Canadian International Day in a few minutes. But before we do that, wanted to touch on some of the other stakes action from yesterday, going back to New York Showcase Day at Belmont Park yesterday. Really a nice card, and it always is. Nice competitive races. There's some value to be had on New York Showcase Day. And I wanted to kick things off and look early on the card at the Sleepy Hollow, because Ostrolenko for Todd Pletcher, I think, is going to be one of the horses that is going to come out of New York bred company and going to be able to face open company going forward. But so far, in 3 career starts, broke the maiden really convincingly just prior to this race yesterday for Todd Pletcher, and so went off as the 65-cent to $1 favorite. We're going to watch the stretch run, and number 2, Ostrolenko, will get it done pretty easily for Todd Pletcher. And Steve, as I said, I think this is one that probably sooner rather than later will be out facing Open Company and probably will be successful doing so.
This horse has surprised Todd Pletcher, and of course for owner, breeder Eric Fine, this is a real homespun product. This is a son of his own Musket Man, of course, that he campaigned with Derek Ryan. And when Ostrolenko won his maiden as impressively as he did, happened to have Pletcher on some other topics that same week. And I asked him, I said, how about this Ostrolenko? And he said, I thought he was going to be okay, and I thought he was going to break his maiden. Not like that. And so this horse has surprised them, and who knows what the upside, and the least of which is a great advertising for Musket Man as a sire and his potential on that front. So this was an impressive win, got I think an 89 buyer. A lot to be impressed with there.
And we'll move on and just give some quick discussion of some of the other races here as we move through. I think the 2-year-old filly race also produced a runner that will be able to face Open Company. Kazan for Bobby Robato broke the maiden pretty impressively in the career debut. Escaped at 4-1 yesterday, but won pretty nicely the Maid of the Mist. The favorite Temperament Patty for Dale Romans runs second, but I think Kazan's going to be a pretty nice 2-year-old as well.
Absolutely delighted for Bobby Robato, who's one of the most respected and best-liked horsemen in New York, and, of course, for his longtime associate owner, Mark Keller. What a nice win it is for him. This horse was impressive, and she was going to be second choice, and when you say get away at 4-1, it's only because Temperament Patty was being considered for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. And Dale Romans opts for this, which you think would be an endorsement for a slam dunk, and she absolutely doesn't have any answer for Kazan here. Kazan gets the jump, and goodbye. Very, very impressive, and I'm very happy for Bobby Robato to have a young horse like this that looks like she's got tremendous upside.
All right, let's move on and go a couple races later to the Iroquois. Got some video. Actually, we don't have video here. I'm just going to mention, wanted to touch on La Verdad in this race. La Verdad gets it done for Linda Rice as the 70-cent to a $1 favorite in here. Willett comes up, runs a pretty good second in the race. So it played out kind of master of the obvious. Top choice over second choice. But again, La Verdad, just, one of those horses now, 15 career starts, 10 wins. Very, very nice victory again from La Verdad yesterday.
Well, for the high-profile owner, for Lady Sheila, it's always a celebration. Happy for her to get this win after, a kind of a summer season where things weren't perfect. But she certainly was perfect here. She had been considered, they were thinking about supplementing for the Breeders' Cup filly and mare sprint. This was probably the smart move, and she'll be around. I doubt that there's any reason to rush her off to the shed.
Yeah, and you talk about a bad summer. There's horses for courses, and I think there's also negative horses for courses, and I'm wondering if that wasn't her up at Saratoga.
They had, according to Linda thought that she was a little kind of off form, too. That certainly may have contributed. But there was something that was amiss with her. And, that can happen. And obviously she's back on track and dominant in here.
All right. A little bit later was the Empire Distaff. First running of this race for $250,000 going a mile and a 16th. And I know we were talking before we went on the air. You were impressed by the winner from the Hushin Barn, Princess Violet.
This is a serious horse. And Mike Hushin came into the day, I thought, with all kinds of promise, whether it was Sue in the Classic or whether it was going to be Captain Sirius in the Sprint. You thought that Hushin had a chance to really dominate the day. This was the one that came through the most, and gosh, this is an emergent filly. She's got another type that with upside. I think you're going to see her against Open Company shortly.
Yeah, she was impressive. Now let's go out to the highlight of the day, the Empire Classic for $300,000, mile and an eighth. And we do have the stretch run here. We're going to watch number 5, FNX Get It Done. A couple of storylines here. It's Jimmy Jerkins. It's a 3-year-old. As we continue this fall theme of 3-year-olds beating older horses in some of these late season stakes races. Jimmy Jerkins trains. FNX Gets It Done at 17-1. And Angel Arroyo on board. Luis Saez had been named. Angel Arroyo fills in. And from what I read, Luis Saez, the brother of the jockey we talked about earlier, Juan Saez, fatally injured. So understandable that he takes off. Angel Arroyo goes on, and from what I've read, Angel Arroyo was Juan Saez's cousin, and Angel Arroyo had a very, very big day yesterday.
3 wins for Arroyo, and he is worth watching. Certainly, came to New York and seemingly looked overmatched early on, but very steadily is showing some signs of stability and progress. This was a big win for him, and FNX, to me, was a real candidate to win this race at a price. I talked about him during the week. All the 3-year-olds in this race. I Love Lulu and So Lonesome, and who's the fourth? There was another one too, Sue for Hushin. All 4 of the 3-year-olds to me had more upside than the elder horses. And FNX was sitting on kind of a pattern you see from 3-year-olds that they make progress, then they kind of pair up, then they make progress, pair up. And that's what he was sitting on. He had to improve to win, and he did. And that's why you got 17-1. And actually, I was surprised. I didn't realize it until looking at the chart this morning. He was the longest shot on the board, which I didn't expect. That kind of took me by surprise. But happy to get that price, and part of a very good late pick 4, and made for a very. I had a terrific day personally.
Yeah, if you had FNX, it'd be a good day right there. As you say, longest shot on the board, 17-1. And Sue, you mentioned that one. I just want to reiterate. Last week, I talked a little bit about this horse when we talked about the race. I thought Sue, coming out of that last race, was going to be the one to bet. A little bit disappointing. 7th in the field of 9 is the 5-2 choice.
Yeah, he was a slight choice over Saratoga Snacks, and I don't know if you want to call it a regression or a bounce, whatever. Keep an eye on Sue. He's still got plenty to offer, but couldn't pair up and couldn't run to the outstanding performance last, but certainly worthwhile. And as for Saratoga Snacks, clearly Bill Mott has not been able to figure out the things that Gary Siaka was able to with this horse. He's a big, heavy horse that's got bad feet. He needs constant attention. He's difficult to keep fit and keep in training at all times, and it hasn't worked. And I know that certainly Bill Parcells, I think, was very unhappy even immediately after he made this ill-advised switch to the Mott barn, and I have no idea what he's going to do now with the Ridgeland, because it's going from bad to worse with these 3 starts for the Mott barn.
Yeah, and Maggie Wolfendale in the paddock yesterday prior to the race was not impressed with the looks of Saratoga Snacks. Before we move on to some other stakes action, some other venues, just also want to mention the Ticonderoga yesterday. Obviously, Discreet Mark, class-wise, had an edge on the field in there and validated that, winning pretty easily at 4-5.
Yeah, she was just dominant, and I guess that's her Breeders' Cup. You also should mention the boys' race, the Ticonderoga, because Carafa, how about Tim Hills? There's Angel Arroyo again. And that's a big win, and got a fat $15 on Carafa. To me, those 3, olders, King Crisa and Lubash, to me, they were interchangeable. I ended up putting Carafa on top, figuring to save the ground, and that's exactly the way it came off. And I thought that was a big, bulky price on him, $15.
Yeah, King Crisa running 3rd in there. All right, let's shift our attention now over to Maryland Millions Day, and I wanted to look at one race in here and then mention the feature race as well. But I wanted to let people take a look at the Ben's Cat race, just because he is such a great story, trained by the venerable King Leatherberry. Ben's Cat, who was in this race last year. It's a strange race from him because he's a turf sprinter, but they've done away with the turf sprint here. So last year he had to make the choice, the mile on the turf or the sprint on the dirt. They went for the mile on the turf last year. Ben's Cat led late and just got caught by Roadhog. As we pick up this year's edition of the Maryland Millions Turf, we will see Ben's Cat and Roadhog, last year's 1-2 performers, ding-donging it on the front. Number 2, Ben's Cat will dispatch Roadhog, but will eventually get run down by Talk Show Man here, unfortunately, in a race incredibly similar to last year, the way Ben's Cat just gets run down late. But again, it's just another really impressive performance, particularly given the fact that this mile is not his trip. But boy, he just holds in there and doesn't give it up until, they're maybe 50 yards away from the wire. So another really nice performance from Ben's Cat.
I'm going to be interested to see what King Leatherbury does next, because I talked with Tony Black this week, and I asked Tony about this decision, about having him go back to the mile. And after the 2 losses, most recently, it was one thing for him to lose at parts where it looked like Julian Pimentel had too much to do late in the Turf Amazon or the Turf Monster. In the Laurel Dash, he had no excuse, and he did not look good, to be honest. So I'm curious if maybe King Leatherbury is going to go ahead and keep running Ben's Cat at a little bit longer distance. He certainly did everything but win here, and what can you say? He's just such an admirable character, and for Parker's Storm Cat, as they say, every sire gets at least one big horse. They'll never wonder who Parker's Storm Cat's big horse was.
Yeah, over $10 million, or over $2 million in the bank, just absolutely incredible. And also just wanted to touch on the feature yesterday, the Maryland Millions Classic for $150,000, because 8 Too Fast to Catch gets it done again. And as we talk about class, I think he just outclassed this bunch, because this is a horse that sat off from December until September, came back and put in what was clearly a prep on the turf, and really threw in a dud there. But again, it was clearly a prep given what 8 Too Fast to Catch did yesterday. Gets it done as the 3 to 5 choice in the big race on the Maryland Millions card.
Now, the best story about the Maryland Millions Day is the fact that it is Maryland Millions Day. Things are so much better down there, and that's the most encouraging portion of this. It was a big day, obviously, for Not for Love sending out 4 of the Maryland Million winners as the sire. It's so healthy for the industry, and whether it was down in Oklahoma on Friday night, the Remington night that they had for Oklahoma Classics night, last night, Charlestown, New York, Maryland. Jim McKay, of course, created this concept based on the Breeders' Cup, and it's taken root across the country, and it speaks so highly for the quality of regional breds and all the opportunities that owners and breeders have on the regional level. It's just a great day of racing. You don't need to have grade ones every weekend to bet and to enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a lot of fun, and I want to close things out with a graded race, because again, a lot of the action that was attractive yesterday were these state-bred kind of stakes, but there was a nice graded race down at Keeneland, the Raven Run Grade 2 event, Fillies and Mares, or excuse me, just Fillies, 3-year-olds, but going 7 furlongs. A nice full field, very competitive in here, and I wanted to show folks, because I think we have a horse that you're going to have to keep your eyes on in the Filly and Mayer Sprint division as we go forward. It's Todd Beatty's Taurus, who impressed so much in the career debut back in December on the inner track at Aqueduct, followed up in only her second career start, winning a $100,000 stake at Laurel, then went down to Oaklawn, disappointed down there, laid off from March until September, came back with a 102 Beyer figure win at Presque Isle Downs. And Taurus, who I thought was really interesting yesterday, and I jumped in at 7-1. We're going to watch the stretch run. Number 5 Taurus will get it done in only her 5th career start, and get it done pretty convincingly. Finishing second, Sweet Whiskey. Thank you, Mary Lou, who is coming off a stakes win at Churchill Downs, a well-beaten third. The favorite in here I thought was a little surprising. At 7-2, it was La Madrina for Shug McGahee. I was disappointed to see number 11, Misbehavior, kind of throw out the anchor at the top of the stretch, but she was in that duel early on with Taurus, and that took its toll. But Taurus here, wow, absolutely impressive. Again, only the 5th career start.
She's terrific. This is a 110 Beyer effort in this spot, and just completely drilled this field. And to run a horse like Misbehavior off her feet, Misbehavior mid-stretch is finished, and everybody else just clunks up for minor awards. This was an overwhelming performance, and for Todd Beatty, who is a very adroit handler of sprinters, all we got to do is think back to Fabulous Strike and all the success that he had. Beatty knows what to do with this kind of horse, and she is a force, undoubtedly. We'll see what he does going forward, but this is right away a filly that is going to make her presence felt in that division. Not necessarily this year, certainly for the Breeders' Cup, but she's your 2015 Winter Book Filly and Mare Sprint favorite.
Absolutely, a really impressive performance. All right, Steve, we'll let you go. We appreciate the visit this morning. Little heads up on what went on at Far Hills yesterday. And next week via phone. Next week, are you out in Southern California already?
I'll be in California. I leave a week from yesterday, so we'll be there, and we'll be talking to you from Clocker's Corner. And right now, talking to you from just outside of Belmont Park, where we're headed for the afternoon with Lemon and Honey in the third today.
Oh, very good. Enjoy the day and good luck, and we'll talk to you next week.
You got it.
All right, Steve Beck again, SiriusXM's At the Races, live via phone from Belmont Park, as reported. He was at Far Hills yesterday, though, and enjoyed the big jump day there. All right, we'll take our next break when we come back. Keith McCalmont from Woodbine, Canadian International Day, the EP Taylor, the Nearctic. We'll talk all of that with Keith right after this. Stay tuned.
I don't know. You hang around here. What do you think?
The Capital OTB Handicapping Challenge Series is back. That's right. The 2014 Capital OTB Handicapping Challenge Series is back, and it's your chance to win thousands in cash and prizes, and a seat at the 2015 Handicapping Championship in Las Vegas. This month's contest is the Thanksgiving Special on November 8th. So sign up today, online at capitalotb.com, or stop in at the Clubhouse Racebook.
Fascinated by the world of horse racing? Interested in honing your handicapping skills? Class is in session. Night school, Monday nights. Easy to access online. It's free, interactive, and informative for the casual and serious race fan. Horse Player Now Buzz. Live horses to watch emailed to you daily. Our eyes, your prize. Night school in the buzz. Visit horseplayernow.com for details.
I didn't want to get just any degree after high school.
Horse racing has always been my passion.
I was already a lawyer.
When I was young, my dad took me to the races. The sound of the crowd. I still remember.
I'm 40, and I don't want to stay in a career I don't love.
I want to follow my passion.
Follow your passion at the University of Arizona Racetrack Industry Program.
Hey race fans, head down to the all-new Clubhouse Racebook. With live horse racing on more than 250 flat-screen TVs, state-of-the-art wagering terminals, and amazing Vegas-style atmosphere. The Clubhouse Racebook, 711 Central Avenue, Albany.
Oh, good morning and welcome back to Loose on the Lead. We're trying to make contact here with Keith McCalmont. He's there. I heard a click in my ear. Keith, good morning. Nope, not now, I'm being told. So we will work on getting Keith into my ear. We had him via phone. Going to talk a little bit about Canadian International, EP Taylor, and now I have a dial tone in my ear. That's never a good sign, but I'm sure we will make connection with Keith. Speaking of racing yesterday, talked a little bit about some of the stakes races around the country, but there was some international racing of interest as well. Caulfield Cup in Australia yesterday was won by Admire Rakti, a Japanese runner, and I believe it was the first time a Japanese runner had come over and won the Caulfield Cup, and Admire Rakti now becomes the early favorite for the Melbourne Cup, which is about a week and a half away. We have the Cox Plate coming up a week from yesterday, and it's always interesting in Australia to see who goes. There's always, in the Melbourne Cup, there's always one or two runners that make the Caulfield Cup, the Cox Plate, and then go on to the Melbourne Cup. So Saturday, 1 week later, Cox Plate, and then a few days later, the Melbourne Cup. So 3 races in just a short amount of time. Over in Great Britain in the Champion Stakes yesterday, it was Noble Mission, the full brother to Frankel, wins the Champion Stakes for Lady Cecil, who the widow of Henry Cecil, who passed away, and I guess there was a lot of emotion over at Ascot yesterday. All right, I'm being told that we now have Keith McCalmont from Woodbine. Good morning, Keith.
Good morning, Seth. How are you?
Very good. Happy to have you on board. And for folks who are going to play Woodbine this afternoon, Canadian International, EP Taylor, and beyond, what's the weather look like?
It's clear and crisp. There's no rain. It's a beautiful fall day here. I think we're going to very soon announce the turf course will be good.
Nice. Very good. And let's get right into it. The Canadian International is the 6th race this afternoon, $1 million Grade 1 event, 1.5 miles on the turf. And Keith, while we talk, going to pull up the Irish St. Ledger from earlier this year because I wanted to take a look at Brown Panther. Brown Panther is going to be the winner of this race from the middle of September. And Brown Panther, 14-1, so a little bit of a price, but wins pretty easily and beats a talented Aidan O'Brien runner in Leading Light. We'll watch Brown Panther win. He's one of the Europeans that will be over here for the Canadian International along with Hillstar. As far as the North American runners, you have Mark Casse coming in with Dynamic Sky. You always have to pay attention to Casse. Pyrite Mountain, Todd Pletcher. This one was entered at Keeneland the other day, but elects this spot. Big Blue Kitten from Chad Brown and Ken and Sarah Ramsey. Always have to pay attention to those connections. And one that I'm going to be intrigued about, the Pizza Man gives it another try. He was so impressive in Chicago, in the Chicago area, earlier this year and late last year. Came up to Woodbine to try the Northern Dancer and couldn't quite get on his game there, but I like that they're taking the shot and coming back with that one. I just find him a real lunch pail kind of runner, so the Pizza Man is intriguing. But again, I think we're going to all have to get by the horse we just took a look at winning the Irish St. Ledger, Brown Panther. What are your thoughts on the International?
Well, first off, the funniest thing about reading Brown Panther's form, most people consider carrying 126 pounds for 1.5 miles a test. This is actually going to be a walk in the park for Brown Panther. He's cutting back from 1.75 miles, and he carried 137 pounds that day. So, trust me, he's going to have no issues with the 1.5 miles. He's good at the distance. He's better going further, but this distance suits him well. I've spent a lot of time in the mornings this week out with the Euros. They arrived on Tuesday. He's on the muscle set. He is absolutely sharp in the morning. He does not look like a horse that's traveled across the pond to get here. He's carrying good weight. His coat is outstanding. His owner, Michael Owen, a famous footballer from Liverpool, who won this morning, by the way, he flew over just to be here for the afternoon. These are all very good omens for Brown Panther.
And Hillstar, the other Euro, how did he look?
Hillstar, also carrying good weight, traveled well. He is sort of the polar opposite of Brown Panther. Hillstar is very chill. He gets out on the turf course. He likes to stand around, watch the other horses train. He's not getting as much of a break in weight as Brown Panther is, but he is first-time LASIK. His trainer, Sir Michael Stout, is highly confident in our interviews with him this week. He's very well prepared. Brown Panther's got the better of him before, but that was at a longer distance. Sir Michael Stout says, 1.5 miles, just as shorter, we get him today.
And give me your thoughts on the Pizza Man. Again, he was Illinois bred, and he was bouncing around Arlington and Hawthorne and going in some state-bred stakes, but then steps it up, wins the Grade 3 Stars and Stripes at Arlington, and then wins the American St. Ledger at Arlington as well. So kind of surprisingly, I guess, because I still think, you look at him as an Illinois bred, but he went off as the favorite in the Northern Dancer. Disappointed there, running 5th. What do you think of him this afternoon?
I have to say, when horses ship into Woodbine, it's hard to get a real good picture if you've only seen them once of what the horse is like. But the Northern Dancer, I didn't like how he looked when he arrived. He seemed a bit dull, and I don't know if he was carrying the same weight, really. This time around, they shipped him in a week early, and he's just blossomed. He seems like a different horse to me, having seen him the second time now. He's really thrived, full of run. I know the exercise riders are getting up on him, and he is so confident in this horse. I really think you can draw a line through that Northern Dancer result. And he wasn't on his game that week. He just wasn't himself. He's going to have a little bit of company on the front end today with Reporting Star, but I don't know that Reporting Star is going to like to go this distance over a softer turf. I think Pizza Man gets first run, and he's going to have to hold off. your €2.
And Reporting Star, again, likely the speed from the outside, ran third in the Northern Dancer. How about the other horse coming out of the Northern Dancer? Mark Cassie's Dynamic Sky ran a good second in that race.
Yeah, Dynamic Sky is really an improving horse. He's frustrating in that he always seems to be coming with the runs, but never quite on time. I think he's your classic speed horse. You could get him into second or third at a price and really make your exotic pay. And I think the same probably goes for another returning Canadian bred, Pyrite Mountain. Since he moved to Pletcher's barn, his buyer numbers have jumped considerably, and he's 2 noses and a head away from coming in on a 3-race win streak.
He is intriguing, particularly gets Spencer on board. On Dynamic Sky last time was Joel Rosario. Rosario goes with Big Blue Kitten for Chad Brown and Kenan Sayre Ramsey in this effort. Won the Sword Dancer up here at Saratoga last year, and now is kind of not lived up to last year's form particularly, but what are your thoughts on Big Blue Kitten?
Yeah, this time last year he probably would have been a clear favorite for this race, on form, and he just hasn't put in that big result. And I think he's probably been hampered by pace a little bit.
Yeah.
And 50 half the last time in the Turf Classic. He's a closer. He needs to make one run. He needs some pace up front. I'm not sold he's going to get that pace again today.
Very good.
I think he's a play again.
All right, very good. So Brown Panther looking solid at this point. But as you say, Pizza Man, for Pizza Man fans, maybe he's coming in a little better than that Northern Dancer. All right, let's shift our attention out a little later on the card. Race number 8 is the Nearctic Grade 2 event. $300,000 on the line for turf sprinters going 6 furlongs. And Keith, I'm going to pull up some video from the Bold Venture back on September 13th. We will watch the number 2 Calgary Cat get it done, and get it done pretty convincingly. 6-1 that day. So floated away a little bit, but had put in some pretty nice numbers on the outside this afternoon, so it should be able to kind of get a good position going around the turn and whatnot. Lockout, if you cross a line through the last race, the Woodbine Mile had some good form prior to that. Upgrade comes in for Chad Brown, and you have Casper Netzker, the Euro, also coming in here with some interest. Paso Doble seems to be in some pretty good form. What are your thoughts in the Nearctic this afternoon?
Patting myself on the back here, I touted Calgary Cat last time on your show, although I think I was talking to Brian Nadeau that day.
Yeah.
And Calgary Cat's a former Cassie horse. 2 years ago, Patrick Cousins came on air and said he's got a Ferrari and I think a Mercedes back in the barn. And the Ferrari was uncaptured, who went on to become our horse of the year, and Calgary Cat was the other vehicle. He got injured, and subsequently he ended up in a claiming race and ended up getting claimed. But now this horse has turned around. He's starting to reach that potential again, and you can't write this horse off your ticket. He is just thriving at the moment. He's in the best form of his life. You have to keep him in your ticket. The horse I really am keen on today, though, is Escaper. He passed over the Woodbine Mile, and then he passed the Kentucky Turf Sprint, which was a Dimension over something extra. Both those horses are going to the Breeders' Cup Sprint, and he fits with that group. So the fact that he skipped those races, pointed for this race, tells me that he's kicking the barn down. He could put in a big effort today, and at 9-2, that's a pretty good pick 4 play for you.
Not very good. Escaper, and I'm looking at Escaper, ridden again by Emma Jane Wilson, which just triggers me to ask you a question that maybe you'll know the answer to. But did Chantel Sutherland re-retire?
I don't believe she has officially said that she's retired, but she went home to California, or her husband is out there, so she was sort of in the position of riding at Woodbine while her husband was running his business in California. So she went home to be with family. I think for all intents and purposes she's retired, and I believe she's going to have a media gig at the Breeders' Cup. So.
Oh, okay. All right, interesting. And finally on the card tomorrow, or this afternoon, excuse me, is the E.P. Taylor, another Grade 1 event, $500,000. These are fillies and mares mile and a quarter on the turf. And while we talk about this one, going to pull up the Canadian Stakes from September 14th. We're going to watch the number 3 Deceptive Vision get it done. Get it done pretty easily at 9-2 there. Deceptive Vision looks interesting to me this afternoon with that big number win. But you have a Euro Wall of Sound coming in, another Euro Odaliz coming in, Eiffel also from over there. But the one that probably intrigues me, and I have to take a shot with, my man Jonathan Shepard. People who watch the show enough know that I like Jonathan Shepard. And Angel Terrace has gotten it done for me at least a couple of times in the career so far. So I find Angel Terrace very, very intriguing. But what are your thoughts on the EP Taylor?
And you know what? You bring up Jonathan Shepard, and he kind of flew under the radar for me, too. I always look Euro in this race, and I'm always intrigued by the French contenders. Starting with Deceptive Vision, yes, won it a mile and an eighth last time over good going, but she picks up 9 pounds and faces an entirely different class of horse here. I think this is a bet again. And as much as I hate to go against the locals, I'm going to go against Just the Judge is a Group 1 winner, comes out of a hugely key race in the Beverly D, which featured Euro Charlene, Stephanie's Kitten. The Moyant was well back in that race. Just the Judge gets Jamie Spencer, who knows this course well, crushed on Woodbine Mile Day here. They have to beat Just the Judge to win this race. In terms of a pair of long shots she can play, legendary French trainer Andre Fabre sends over Eiffel, 20-1. 20-1 Seth on the morning line. You have to have a ticket, including that horse in your multis. It's stepping up in class, but it seems to get better as the distance improves. And the last horse I want to point out to your viewers is Wall of Sound, trained by Tom Daston, who's brought over Brown Panther for the International. The last race that Wall of Sound was in finished third. The 2 horses in front of him came out to be next out excellent performances. One, Hadassah, finished third on Arc Day, and the second place horse was a Godolphin horse who romped by 6 lengths in a race in England. So there's another key race and a horse that's stepping up in class that could get you there at a price.
Very good. We like prices. So those are the 3 main stakes on the card this afternoon. There's other great action at Woodbine, and certainly we will be paying attention and enjoying all of it. And Keith, we appreciate the visit. Good luck to you and everybody up at Woodbine this afternoon. We'll talk to you again.
Thank you so much, Seth. Good luck, everybody, today.
Thanks. Keith McCalmont from Woodbine. A little earlier on, we were joined by phone from Belmont Park from my co-host Steve Bick. He was at Far Hills yesterday enjoying the jump racing, where there was an eclectic mix of stakes action from around the country. New York Showcase Day at Belmont, down at Laurel, Maryland Millions, Charlestown, West Virginia Breeders' Classic, Remington. It was an Oklahoma Stakes Day. The jump action at Far Hill, and again, Caulfield Cup in Australia, Champions Day over at Ascot in England. So across the country and around the world, some intriguing racing. We'll be talking more about that as the week progresses on Racing Across America, but that's going to wrap things up for Loose on the Lead for this Sunday morning. Don't forget, if you have questions, comments, or suggestions, we would love to hear from you. looseonthelead@yahoo.com. By all means, get in touch with us and let us know what you are thinking. Going to wrap things up now. We're here every Sunday morning from 10 until 11 a.m. with Loose on the Lead, but the programming does continue tomorrow morning. We'll be back with Handicapper Support at 9 and Racing Across America at 10 a.m. So enjoy the races this afternoon. Let's cash a few tickets. We'll see you again tomorrow morning.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off Track Betting.